Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today's Saturday, May 9th, 2020. So some of the articles and the stories that we've been seeing in the mainstream media have been like this, that the virus will be with us for a long time. That's the World Health Organization. Doctors, experts saying that the US should have the lockdown for as long as possible. And then we're told that we must stay locked down until we all take our vaccine, because the only way to achieve immunity, according to the World Health Organization, is to take a vaccine. But the problem is that this vaccine could be 18 months away. So I guess we're supposed to just stay locked down until then. But they didn't get 12 to 18 months of total lockdown, because it took about 6 weeks until people started losing it and the economy started to unravel. I think the test, the live exercise, like Pompeo said, is it's never really over, but the lockdown stay-at-home order for the most part is over. And so now we're getting all kinds of articles out that I've noticed since my last videos. Scary stories about how many people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people are going to die because this lockdown is going to end. Reopening states could cause 233,000 more deaths, says a study. The cost of reopening the economy? Lives. The price of reopening the economy? Tens of thousands of American lives. And then there's a bunch of articles like this. COVID-19 cases on the rise in state that starts first phase of reopening. And then boom, outbreak shows shaky ground as Texas opens. New Mexico takes more drastic measures against virus hotspots. And it's all based off the lockdown being an effective way to stop infections, which is not the case. The whole point of the lockdown was to not overload the hospitals, which is over. It's past. But if you listen to the media now, it's almost as if the narrative or the reason why we had the lockdown for 6 weeks has changed. Now we have to stay locked down until there is absolutely zero infections. But it's not surprising, because we've seen the articles from the experts and Bill Gates saying that the lockdown won't end until everyone's vaccinated, which sounds pretty extreme, but that just tells you what their mindset is, what their main goal is. So back to this article, a place in the U.S. with no COVID-19, American Samoa. The territory which has sealed itself off from the outside world has no confirmed cases. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have this experiment taking place, Sweden, resisting the lockdown, and its capital, Stockholm, is expected to reach herd immunity in weeks. And there's a video of a Swedish doctor, actually I think he was like the head epidemiologist in Sweden, and I think he worked with even the WHO or something. But he went on there and explained the reasoning why they did what they did. And he said that, their only regret is that they should have taken more care of the elderly people, and he blamed that on the fact that most of the people taking care of the elderly Swedish people are refugees and migrants. I thought that was kind of funny. You have this guy. He is a German doctor who works in New York, and you guys have probably seen all these, but there may be some people that haven't seen him, and they're just kind of like, if you're completely on board with this stuff's kind of mind-blowing. But he's a professor, and he said that there's no way that Anthony Fauci and Neil Ferguson could have made these mistakes when they made their models accidentally. The other video that I showed in my last video was this guy, John Leonidas, I think. But anyways, perspectives on pandemic. This guy's went through and interviewed these different doctors who basically lay it all out, that this whole thing was no more dangerous than the flu. This did blow my mind when I saw this. He said that the peak of hospital admissions here in the U.S. was March 18th, the peak of infections. And the lockdown started right around that time. So we didn't even have to do the lockdown. And that's why I said they had to have known this. There's no way that they didn't know. But that was the whole point, was to bring about the lockdown. Problem, reaction, solution. Whether it was made in a lab or not, whether they created the problem, well, they took advantage of the crisis, right? So states such as mine, Indiana, they have their own plan to open up. It's going to take like 2 months, 5 stages or something. So by July 4th, everything should be lifted. But there's holdouts like in New York. They're not going to open up. This says no other way to curb coronavirus than to stay the course on stay-at-home restrictions. This is actually Illinois. Sorry, that was the mayor of Illinois saying that, but it's also New York too. New York and Illinois. They're just going to keep it locked down. And then they can have rules like this, where you have little bubbles. People weren't supposed to meet in groups of 10 or more, and I guess police were supposed to enforce that. I mean, in the UK and that, they actually enforce a lot of these crazy rules, harassing people in the streets, arresting them, finding them. Police warn it might be impossible to make sure that people are only meeting in 10 strong bubbles when social distancing rules are loosened. And they're talking about the prospect of trying to make sure people adhere to the concept of only meeting people with strict bubble of friends and families. The point here is that police would have the ability to just stop you and ask you, who are you with? Why are you with that person? You can't be with that person. You can't associate with that person. They can already just stop you and say, why are you out, with your dogs at a park? You can't be here. Why aren't you staying 6 feet apart? Why aren't you wearing a mask? I mean, there's already enough things before this whole pandemic that they could harass you about. Why are you out driving right now? Is this essential travel? This headline I love. Lifetime lockdown. 40% of Americans will avoid public spaces long after coronavirus pandemic ends. 16% of Americans say they're not sure if they'll ever be comfortable going out in public again. Apparently everyone's going to be OCD now, right? 6 out of 10, 60% say they're going to be more concerned about their friends' and family's hygiene moving forward. 1 in 4 workers will leave their job if their employer doesn't invest in stronger cleaning practices. I noticed at Walmart, a lot of these places, they're spraying down these baskets and the shopping carts with all these chemicals, and I'm just like, dude, like we already have enough chemicals everywhere you touch in our society, and they wonder why cancer rates are always so high. They're spraying the skies with all kinds of heavy metals and nanofibers and particles and stuff. And God only knows what it's doing to our health. And so, yeah, let's just start coating everything with chemicals in order to keep ourselves sanitized. And I saw an article, something about the vaccine that they're making is going to have, aborted fetal tissue, and I've heard that before. But it's just like you wonder what's in that stuff too. Poll says Americans are afraid of ending the coronavirus lockdowns too soon. Lockdown protesters take to streets in anger, but poll finds 60% of Americans fear the restrictions will lift too early. And I kept seeing a bunch of articles like this before the lockdown didn't even end yet. It just started. And all these articles started pouring out about how Americans are scared of the lockdown. But yet you see these protests taking place where there's armed militias and stuff. I mean, and just regular people who are jobless. But I do when I see stories like this, when they try to make it seem like there's more people on board with some kind of agenda that they're pushing, I'm usually skeptical about it, because that's how they're trying to engineer consent by saying, there's 60% that are for the lockdown still. But I do think that it has been a lot of programming taking place during this whole lockdown, a whole psychological experiment. I do think that the download was successful into Americans and their programming, at least the majority of them. But there is still a divide of people like myself, like those people that are out protesting, that are not on board with this. This was May 8th. Nearly 2/3 of Americans say it's too early to reopen amid the pandemic. Fear that more lives will be lost as states rush to get back to business. It's not exactly a rush. Like I said, this could take 2 months. Out in Maine, they're saying they're not even going to start ending the lockdown until July, so they won't even be back to normal by the end of the year. The other part is society and people's mentality or mental state. It's not just about the economy, it's also about people. You can't keep them locked up in their houses, tell them they can't see each other. It's not healthy. This is another narrative that the media has been pushing, I've noticed. They keep saying that governors are continuing to ease their state's coronavirus lockdowns while cases of the deadly virus continue to climb. So we hit the peak in fucking March, right? That was it. 7 weeks now. And they keep stating that we haven't gone over the hump, that they haven't reached the top of we haven't flattened the curve yet. I mean, what kind of numbers are these people looking at? And then you have the White House Coronavirus Task Force Coordinator Deborah Birx on Sunday saying that It was devastatingly worrisome that stay-at-home protesters aren't practicing social distancing. It's because they don't believe in it. With not wearing masks, I saw plenty of protesters wearing masks and stuff like that. But for the most part, if you're out protesting to end the lockdown, then it means that you're willing to, go back to normal. Then why would you be social distancing and doing all these measures? So they're saying it's creating a divide in Americans. It also says that 84% of non-whites are against the reopening, while 52% of white Americans are about ending the lockdown. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Another interesting little sentence here, the way they worded it. Despite concerns states are reopening too soon, 25% of Americans said they would not get vaccinated even if an effective vaccine was developed. So if you look at it like that, they're against reopening and they're for vaccination. No reopening until you take your vaccine. More articles that I've seen are along this theme of wearing a mask, and it's based off people who wear masks and think that they're saving lives, and this is all based off facts, that you need to wear a mask or you're going to die and you're going to kill other people. So when they see you not wearing a mask, and they kind of look at you like you're a piece of crap, or not staying 6 feet apart. It says here, is it driving you crazy? Here's how to keep the focus on yourself instead of basically them telling you what to do. There's reports of vigilantes publicly shaming or even reporting neighbors to authorities for hosting social gatherings, people yelling in the faces of those who don't wear a mask or stand or walk or run too close for comfort. You have CNN psychoanalyzing mask non-wearers, the psychology behind some people who won't wear masks. He says here he urges Americans to think of the mask guidance not as a forced conformity, but as a necessary act of solidarity. So wear the mask, or don't have a job and work and earn money. Wear the mask, or you can't go in the grocery store and get food. And that's part of being an American. That's why it kind of makes me sick when I see these signs that say we're all in this together. I mean, there's all kinds of variations on that same fucking slogan. And we're not all in this together because I don't support it. I don't support this social experiment. The New York governor, Cuomo, said that it's selfish if you don't wear a mask. It's insensitive, arrogant, self-destructive, and disrespectful. So like I said, if the law wouldn't make you wear a mask, maybe saying those things to somebody might guilt trip them into wearing them. In Oklahoma, they end the face mask rule for shoppers after store employees are threatened. 3 people killed a security guard at Family Dollar in Flint, Michigan, because they refused to wear a mask. In Ohio, they repealed the face mask rule. He said people are not going to accept government telling them what to do. Though it's not allowed to leave your house in some states like New York City, now they said that protests are not allowed during the pandemic. Actually, they said protests would not be tolerated. Swiss restaurants to record names and addresses of patrons for contact tracing. And then we have CNN getting the public ready for the possibility that the lockdown will never end. It says here, CNN says lockdown lifestyle may be eternal, vaccine may never come. So during this lockdown, countries are frozen. Public figures are teasing a breakthrough that would mark the end of a crippling coronavirus pandemic. A vaccine. Worst case possibility, no vaccine is ever developed. But the public's hopes are repeatedly raised and then dashed, because we all want one, right? Instead of wiping out COVID-19, societies may instead learn to live with it. Cities would slowly open and some freedoms will be returned, key word, some freedoms, but on a short leash. If the experts' recommendations are followed, testing and physical tracing will become a part of our lives in the short term, but an abrupt instruction to self-isolate could come at any time. Treatments may be developed, but outbreaks of the disease could still occur each year, and they keep saying that's going to happen every year, twice a year. You have the WHO saying there's no assumption that a vaccine will appear at all. It's essential that societies get ready to defend themselves against the coronavirus as a constant threat, and to be able to go about social life and economic activity with the virus in our midst. As the lockdown eases, experts would push governments to implement an awkward new way of living and interacting to buy the world time in months, years, or decades until COVID-19 can be eliminated by a vaccine. Boris Johnson asked people to pull together $6 billion for a vaccine. Thank you.